Hi, and welcome to today's edition of Let's Talk. Today's focus is going to be on our district's adoption of the North Carolina Portrait of a Graduate. And joining me today is our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Paula Wilkins.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited about our topic today, which is really going to be on the Portrait of a Graduate and how this portrait, this very important work, is going to impact instruction in our classrooms and is going to honestly impact the skills that our students leave our school district with as they enter college, military, workforce, and then even life beyond college. And so we're going to spend some time today unpacking why we adopted it and where we're headed with it. All right? So my first question is really going to be on, talk about, why it was so important for our district to bring the portrait forward to our Board of Education and actually say we are going to adopt this portrait kind of as our North Star for our school system.
So we talk about a lot about what skills our young people need to have to be successful in life and the workforce. But one of the things we don't talk about enough about is how do we teach those skills? How do we measure them? And so what the portrait provides us is not just the outcome of skills, but it begins to help us think about how we live that through our classroom learning, instruction, assessment. All of those have to be connected. And for us, it's beyond just academic content. These are the durable skills, and so you'll hear that term quite often. These are the skills that every student should walk away with as they exit high school.
Yeah, so the durable skills. So really, if we enter a classroom, just to make this come to life for teachers and families and students, anyone that watches Let's Talk, what will we see as the portrait comes to life in classrooms?
So one of the things that I think we have all talked about is what do schools look like post-COVID, right? And so I think what these durable skills within the portrait that get us to live those out. So what does collaboration look like? How do we teach young people to work with each other? How do we help them work through conflict in groups or an end product? You should see that come to life, and you should see evidence of that in a classroom. How do we communicate with other people? How do we get our point across and make sure that we're clear? How do we take on personal responsibility? So I'm naming some of those competencies, but what it does is it helps us get action to point to that. Yes. We say so often, oh, children these days aren't responsible. Well, how are we teaching them to be responsible for themselves and others? Yeah. And that's an intentional process. And not only do we have to teach it, we must allow for multiple opportunities for practice.
Absolutely. And so when I think about the durable skills, and you named some of them with collaboration and adaptability, learner's mindset you mentioned, one of those is critical thinking. And so to your point, all of our students are capable of learning these skills. These are teachable skills. These are learnable skills for everyone. And so what I hear you saying is that as we walk into classrooms, as we see teaching happening, that if we practice these skills, if we incorporate these skills into everything we do, our students will be able to learn them and will be able to demonstrate them in the future. And so I want to hone in on, critical thinking and what that means. Can you talk a little bit more about that? So as we walk into classrooms and see amazing instruction happening, and where critical thinking would be something that we are getting our kids prepared to do, what might that look like? I know I'm putting you on the spot to describe it, but we see great instruction all the time. What does that look like in action?
So in action, it's about students being able to apply the academic content that they're learning. So for so many years, it was about knowledge, right? And we're moving away from knowledge. We're moving to application. We're moving to them being able to question, to be able to take a piece of content. If they've read something on the internet, this is my favorite. So the internet's all true. No, we absolutely know it's not. But how do we get them to analyze the content they've read somewhere to be able to break down, is this a credible source? And how do they know? And how do they look at multiple pieces of information and to be able to say, how do I know I can take this content as factual information and be able to apply it into other contexts? I think the other piece that we're looking at is students being able to take information from a mathematics class and be able to take that to problem solve in a real life situation. So if they are, for instance, one day gonna buy a home, you need to know about square footage.
Yes.
And you begin to learn those concepts in mathematics class because you don't want to be overcharged for a home that you might build.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, what we want to do is to blend what we call rigorous academic content and the mindsets and skills that we want our students to have, which leads to what we hear about deeper learning, which is about the student thinking that we want to see happening. So it is no longer about what the educator can do or what we might call the sage on the stage and the teacher who's very engaging. We do want engaging teachers, we do. But it is not the responsibility of the teacher to be the be-all, end-all, to pour the knowledge into the vessels in our classrooms. It is about the teacher facilitating the opportunities for students to be able to explore what is it that you want to learn, or what are the rich tasks that we need you to do, and to give you opportunities to learn the skills so that you can complete those tasks.
I love it. And when this kind of learning, when we talk about when students are experiencing true deeper learning, where the learning is rigorous because it's challenging their thinking, it's relevant. I remember years and years ago of Bill Daggett's work about rigor, relevance, and relationships.
Yes.
That is coming full circle right now with our deeper idea, our idea about deeper learning. And so our community, our teachers, everyone is going to hear, our students, our staff, everyone's going to hear these words, deeper learning. They've already been hearing it from our Summer Leadership Institute and from our Back to School Bash, but this idea of deeper learning. And when kids are experiencing that, they're excited about what they're learning, and it gets them really engaged in high school. I think it's, the passive learning that I'm just sitting and listening and not having that active engagement. I think that tunes us all out.
Absolutely.
Like even when we go to adult learning and we think about that, we want our learning as adults to be exciting, to be rich and relevant and relational. And we can't a lot can't happen without that relationship and that relational the relational work. So I think that's important. I'm excited about what the portrait means as we backwards map that into instructional excellence every day and what that's going to mean for our kids. And I think it'll also bring the joy back to teachers as they're planning for the lessons that are more engaging and as they're working with their teammates. It's like, and I'm seeing it. Like I'm in classrooms a lot during the week and just visiting quick. I'm not in there like assessing and all of that. That's not really what I do when I visit schools, but I'm in there and I'm seeing examples, and I have a phone full of pictures that show evidence of that. And so I think as we think about then is our kids, if they're all able to get this type of instruction daily and they're learning these durable skills and say they can actually demonstrate those as they leave our schools, what does that mean for their future as far as in the workplace? Like, why is this so important, not just for our kids in our schools now, but like for our business community and for the future?
So I think there's two parts of that. You build a cadre of students who can create the jobs to solve the problems of tomorrow. And we think about many of the things that we know are problems and the solutions, they haven't even been thought of yet. But when we give students this opportunity to be able to process academic content in meaningful ways to solve problems, we help them create the jobs for the future. I think the other thing is we create the employees that all of our businesses want in the future. Those who can have stamina to complete tasks, those who take personal responsibility and personal ownership when they're given assignments from an employer, those who can use information in novel ways, right? We think about organizations like Google and Mac as being transformational organizations. What those organizations do is they look for the employees that have these durable skills that go beyond just them knowing information. There are so many students who have lots of knowledge, but they cannot apply them in novel ways. And so for an employer, that doesn't do you, much good when you have an employee who's extremely bright in an isolated context and they know so much academic knowledge, but you ask them to do a task or complete a task or meet a deadline and they can't do it. And so for us in schools, we're having to think about what does the learner for today look like? How do we equip them for those skills that are successful in life? and give them opportunities to demonstrate those. And so a lot of that is thinking about, how do we have capstones for grade levels where we say focus on personal responsibility and create a meaningful task where they get a whole year to work through evidences and a portfolio and a rubric process and get feedback around how they've demonstrated that competency of personal responsibility. Those are just critical for success for our society and for the health and well-being of our students and our school systems.
Absolutely. And I think our students, we know last year as we did shadow visits of students and as we interviewed students in focus groups and videoed students as to when was learning most meaningful for them. And you did an incredible job on that video with our communications team. What I will say is that it was very clear to students when learning was most meaningful, and it was when they were getting to, use these skills within instruction, and to really have that hands-on, engaging, meaningful, relevant instruction, which is what happens when we focus on making sure the durable skills are evident within our instruction. And so, we talked a little bit about, mentioned families, and we've mentioned students, and so how are we going to as we move forward with this work this year, how are we going to engage our parents, community leaders, business community, all community in general, our staff, our students, all stakeholders? Like, how are we going to engage them in really thinking more about the portrait and bringing the portrait to life, like throughout our community? I think it's, we know that's important to do. What are some of the things we're planning on doing in that area?
So I think one of the things to say so clearly about the portrait is the portrait was created with the state with multiple stakeholder feedback. So colleges and universities, families, educators. And so that was kind of our first step, the broad state level view. Now we have to transfer that into local context. And so that means bringing our families together. And so we have upcoming, and I'm sure some of those dates will be shared very soon, what we're calling Future Ready conversations. And so those are opportunities for our families, for our communities, for our teachers, for our administrators to come together, even with our students, to say, if we know this is our outcome, what are the intentional experiences? What are the intentional opportunities we need to make sure we provide as a school system? And how do we do this together with families? And so that layer of input is going to be critical for the success, because the portrait is all about how do we all have a collective vision. So the state started off with that work, and now we got to live it. We got to move from that portrait to practice. Yeah. What is the application in our local context? And so I'm excited for that opportunity to do this with our community.
Absolutely. So when parents and community leaders that receive this, and students and staff, when they receive this invitation about coming to Future Ready sessions, we're going to have, I think, 4 in the evening. We hope they'll come. Sign up so that we can get everybody there. So, because we really do need this to be a collective voice. And I know some districts, many districts are doing all the initial work on what are those durable skills, and they're doing that in isolation of their state. We have the benefit of the fact that our state has done this work, and they have a great starting point for us. And so the fact that we're adopting what our state as a whole, who had many stakeholders at the table, many community members at the table, to pick these durable skills, I think that we're starting with, here are the durable skills are, and now we can push forward quicker. But keeping these skills as the North Star in our classrooms and across our schools and in our community, I think are really important. It's interesting. Yesterday I was at 2 days ago, or it might have been yesterday, I can't remember. I was at a superintendent meeting, and there was a session on artificial intelligence. Yes. And we also discussed that Monday in cabinet. And it's funny because one of the skills, the durable skills they said we might want to be adding to our portrait at some point is curiosity. Because that's going to be huge as, we use artificial intelligence, like we have to be curious as we use the tools to further our knowledge. And it's not just about like knowledge, it's about solving real problems. And so it's incredible. There's a lot more to come with that. And so, I know that one of the other areas that our state has worked on and that we are thinking about in the future, not necessarily right in this moment, but as we think, you mentioned capstones, but are there any other ways that we will start moving forward to assess these? Or is there any, what is the state saying, or state leaders saying about assessment of the durable skills?
So there are a few things to note. So one is the state is working on a series of rubrics, and many of them are rolling out right now to begin to give districts a framework to provide support to them as they begin to start to think about measuring these durable skills. The other thing the state has provided is a portrait playbook, right? And so there are lessons for teachers to use for students. They are lessons for administrators to engage their faculty with around the portrait competencies. And so I think what we are excited and grateful about with our state is that our state has already started that work to help with some tools. And so what we're doing on a local context, we have a series that will culminate towards the end of the 21st century kind of conversations with our community that will be for our teachers and our educators. And so those will be rolling out as well to help support our educators around this work of deeper learning. We can say those terms all the time, but until we begin to unpack, put a name to it, give some ideas of how we integrate the academic content. And so for our context, we really want to push, how do we integrate academic content with the skills and mindsets, which is going to be critically important.
Absolutely. So this is exciting. It's exciting work. It's work that's going to drive us forward, drive our strategic plan forward, it's important work. And what's great, and we've said this to our teachers and everyone, is that, you know, this is not a new initiative. This is taking durable skills that our students should be able to demonstrate in classrooms and learn in classrooms and demonstrate as they leave our schools, and it's just bringing it to life. I mean, it's doing the work that our amazing educators do every day. So it's not going to feel like a new initiative, but it is the most important work we do. It's that, I think you said it earlier, and I want to say it right. It's the kind of the integration of the rigorous content and the durable skills with the mindsets.
Yes.
Correct?
Absolutely.
To have our kids ready for
life
all the amazing post-secondary options and life in general. And so that's what we're talking about. And so to anyone that watches this, you're going to hear a lot about durable skills. You're going to hear a lot about our North Carolina Portrait of a Graduate, how Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools has adopted this portrait, and how it's going to continue to be the North Star that we are working to achieve with our students. And so you're going to feel it. Kids should come home energized about their learning. And so we're really excited. So we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Let's Talk, and more to come. Thank you.